Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Becca and I am going to be doing my December wrap up today. In the month of December, I read a total of 12 books. Some I really liked and some not so much. But let's get to it. The first book I read, I actually borrowed from the library for the first part of it, and then the second part of it, I think I was listening to the audiobook. Actually, I kind of I had the audiobook that I listened to when I was driving, and then when I was actually home, I actually read the physical book, so it was kind of back and forth until I was able to get that book done. And it's called An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir, and it's basically about a gal named Laya. I have it written down because it's like the first book that I read this month, or the first book that I read in December, so bear with me. When I read, I kind of forget what I've read previously because I'm solely focused on the book that I'm currently reading. Anyhow, back to the book. So An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I'm sorry if I totally butchered that. I'm horrible with names. So it's about a girl named Laya. She's a slave who's forced to become a spy to help and try and save her brother who has been arrested. And then Elias, who was chosen as a child to become the finest soldier, who wants nothing to do with being a soldier. He hates it. He at one point tries to plan running away, but the two, because of their situation, their worlds kind of come together, and they have to help each other to survive in a martial empire, which all the empire wants to do, their first thought is to kill first, ask questions later, kind of a thing. So anyway, that's just the brief synopsis of that. There's so much more in depth about it. It's a great big book, but that is just a brief summary or synopsis, whatever you want to call it, about that. The second book that I read, I also don't have a physical copy because I gave my physical copy to my best friend who was really interested in reading it, and so she was able to get it for Christmas for me because I loved it so much. But it is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Like I said, I am horrible with names. But it's about a young witch named Louise, but she goes by Lou, and she's on the run from her coven, and it's about a guy named Reed, who is a chasseur, I believe is how it's pronounced, which is a religious witch hunter. He's kind of like a soldier, but his main focus is to hunt witches and kill them, burning them at the stake. And because of certain circumstances and you know, unfortunate event, the two are forced to marry. She knows that he's a witch hunter, but he has no idea that she is a witch. And she's a spitfire. I love her humor. She's usually in books you have it to where the girl is very prudish or very innocent, and the guy is kind of outlandish, and she's drawn to that. But this is actually kind of reversed, where she is the outlandish one. She, you know, she's supposed to be a lady, you know, a young lady, and I think it was set back in, the way it sounds, I can't remember, so don't quote me on it. Tell me below if you know the era, but I believe it's set in like the 1800s type style, where the women shouldn't be out in public without a chaperone, and they should be in dresses and talk very politely, and there's certain things that women don't say. Well, Lou is very much the tomboy, and she cusses and she talks nasty, and it's hilarious because it makes Reed very uncomfortable because he's very reserved, and you know, his job as the witch hunter is actually not state sanctioned. He actually works for the church. I think it's the Catholic Church or the Roman Church. I can't remember which church. Like I said, this was the second book that I read at the beginning of the month, so it's kind of out my head. But anyhow, they are forced to marry. She knows he is a witch hunter. He has no idea that she's a witch. Lou's past comes back to haunt her, and so decisions have to be made and things happen, and it's crazy, and I loved it. It was amazing. So that was that book. The next book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This one is based on, I guess it's like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But the biggest difference is the girl is human and the guy is a fae. And so her name is Feyre, and it starts out with, you know, she and her family are very, very poor. They're basically living off of nothing but the animals that she can find and hunt in the forest that she lives next to. And the fairy world is just on the other side of this great big forest where they live right next to it. The fae are known to be ruthless and killers, and they eat humans and all this sort of stuff. So they're always on edge about the fae. And so one day while she's hunting, she comes across this great big wolf. She's trying to shoot this deer, but this wolf starts stalking the deer first, and so, you know, she decides that her family needs to eat. It's more important, so she kills the wolf, and then she gets the deer, and she goes home, and the next thing I know is this great big beast has come into their home and is speaking to them and demanding, you know, to find out who killed this wolf, which in turn is actually a fae soldier or something along those lines. And so because she had killed a fae, she has two choices. She can either be killed right then and there, or basically go back to his place and stay with him forever. And so she goes back with him, and all this stuff happens, and it's crazy, and it's emotional, and it's a bunch of stuff. I don't know how to explain it. But it's a very good romance novel. It does have a lot of smut in it. So I wouldn't say, you know, let your 12-year-old kid read it. Would probably not be my first choice. It's probably meant for more of a new adult than a young adult type of a book. So that was the third book that I read. The fourth book is the second book in the Court of Thrones series, and it's called A Court of Mist and Fury. It's by Sarah J. Maas, and it continues along the story where the story previously leaves off with Freya, which is the main gal in the story, and she is navigating the world of the Fae and having to, I don't know, I don't want to give too much away because I think that if I say too much about this book, then it ruins the first book. So we're just going to leave it at that. It also has some smut in it, so that, you know, I think anything by Sarah J. Maas might have smut. That's just my personal opinion. I haven't really read much of her stuff yet, but I plan on reading lots more. So that is that one. The next one I read was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. And this is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. It's super creepy. It is one that I could not put down once I picked it up. I literally read it in one day, and it was really, really creepy, and I loved it. So that was that one. The next book I read was the first in a trilogy, and it's The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. And it talks about a girl, her twin sister, and her half human, half fae sister are end up from going from the human world living into another, you know, it's a fae book. So they they're brought into the world of fairy and they have to survive it. And there's a lot of bullying and things like that. So if you're triggered by bullying, be aware that there is a lot of bullying in this. But I absolutely love this book. And I think you will too. That's just my opinion. But yeah, this one was a very hyped book, and I believe that it stands up to the hype. The next one is the next one in the series. It's called The Wicked King by Holly Black, and it's just the next segment of the trilogy and the craziness that's going on in the world of Fae and the love story, or sort of love story that's going on at that time. The next one is the, if I don't drop it on the floor, the third and final book in that series, which is called The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. And it is the conclusion to everything going on, and everything comes to a head, and it's just so deliciously good. I loved every minute of it. But this entire trilogy I read in a week. Once I picked up the first book, I was done. I had to read the entire thing, and I absolutely loved it. The next book that I read was the final book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I don't know if that's the title of it or not. But it is Capturing the Devil by Kerri Maniscalco. I hope I said that correctly. But it's basically a gal that, it's in the 1800s also, where women are expected to be ladies. They're supposed to be working on securing a marriage and playing tea parties and, you know, running households. And the lead character, her name is Audrey Rose. She actually has a secret life, which she sneaks out and goes to help her uncle, who, what is it called? Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of what it's called. I know you guys are probably all yelling at me that no. So anyway, she works on cadavers and basically helps solve crimes. Each book has its own historical villain and serial killer. Basically, it's based on certain serial killers, but it's all done in a way where it's not, some of it's actually what happened. And I think the first book, in the back of it, it actually talks about what happened and what didn't happen, as far as like what her liberties were and what actually is history of what had happened during the Jack the Ripper. But this is the final book in the series. I think it's the book number, let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, book number 4. So this is book number 4 in the series, and it is the final conclusion. I'm not going to talk much about it because it would spoil all the other books for you, and I don't want to do that because it's such a great series. I really enjoyed it, and even though it's such a different book, or a different series of books. It's very I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, so there's that one. I wish I knew better how to describe these books. I'm so not good at it. And then the next book that I read was The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. This was a brand new book that came out this year, actually last year, because now it's 2020. But it is a retelling of the King Arthur story, but it takes on its whole new life and a whole new twist. I absolutely loved it, read it in a day. I can't wait. I believe it's gonna be a trilogy, I think. The next book hopefully will be out this year or next year. I don't know. But I am in love with this book. So yeah, that's a really good one. And the one that I read after that was The Wicked Deep by Shea Ernshaw. And this one is a really creepy telling about 3 girls that in 1822 in Oregon were sentenced to death because of being witches. And when they were killed, it actually put a curse on the town. And every year they come back to wreak havoc. And so the lead character in the story, Aurora, oh no, that's one of the other sisters. Yeah, so anyhow, it was a really good book. This is another one I read in a day. And it was very creepy, and it was a good spooky book. So this would be a good October book if you so chose, or if you just want to read something really mysterious and creepy and talks about witches coming back for revenge. You know, that's a book for you. And then the final book that I read in December was Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. And I believe how it's described, yeah, it's described here, part Wonder Woman, part Viking. She is amazing. She's a warrior. She fights alongside all of these men. She fights just as good as these men. And basically what happens is during a fight, she sees her brother, which was supposed to have died in a fight 3 years previous, and he was actually wearing the clothes of the opposing clan. I think they call them clans. Anyhow, he is on the rivalry side, and so she's completely spooked by it. She goes to investigate. She ends up being held captive while she's trying to figure everything out. And so you have these 2 clans that are fighting each other, and then you have this 3rd clan that is bigger and more vicious than the 2 that come together to fight every 5 years. And so she's trying to figure out how to get back home. She's trying to figure out how to, you know, what the deal with her brother is. And you also have this 3rd army, or this 3rd clan, that is menacing and threatening and everything. And she is seriously like my hero. If I had to pick one woman out of all the books that I've ever read that I thought was just, excuse my vernacular, but badass, this one is it. She is completely amazing. And I don't know how to say her name. I think it's Ellen? I don't know. So if anybody can pronounce that for me correctly, that would be wonderful. But anyhow, that is all the books that I had read for the month of December. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. That way, anytime I upload any new videos, you are notified for that. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.